Yeah. Please mute yourselves on Zoom if you haven't already. Good morning. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to the Shloshim of Lewis, Eliezer and Yitzchok. I'd like to call up Anthony to share first tribute. Anthony.
Oh, no, maybe it's issue. No, it's all right. Rabbonim, family and friends, welcome to Dad's Shloshim to mark the 30th day following his Lavoya. In January 1980, shortly after Dad, Mum, and a 6-month-old Stephen moved to Loughton, Dad applied to join the Shul. That application would mark the beginning of a relationship between Dad, the Shul, and the Loughton Jewish community that would last for the next 42 years. Dad was never one for change. The mere mention of the word would cause him to sit up and say, change, change, with a worried expression on his face. Be it his work, car, home, or his Shul, Dad wasn't one for change. And so perhaps it's unsurprising he remained a member for all those years. But in his time as a member, he shared many simchas with the Loughton community. 2 more children followed shortly after Stephen. He celebrated with my bris milah. There were 5 bar mitzvah bar chayils, for which we have to thank Johnny Lorraine for officiating. Obviously remarrying, and of course he shared the sadder times, mourning the passing of his parents, mixed together with the simchas of weddings. So as Dad shared many of the most important events in his life with the Shul, it's the family's hope that with the commissioning of a new Sefer Torah in his memory, that relationship and his legacy will continue for many years to come. Like in so many areas of Dad's life, he tried to support the Shul, but from the sidelines, and almost quite literally as his seat was just around the corner between the 2 pillars there. But as with so many other things, he was thrust into the spotlight when the Shul were at a time when they were unable to appoint key roles. Dad's selflessness and sense of duty shone through, and he reluctantly agreed to be the warden. I remember him coming home and telling me that it was only a stopgap until someone else was able to do it. He didn't really see himself in the role, but for the next 10 years, he made the job his own, putting his very unique touch on it. In how many shuls in North London would the warden get away with not wearing a tie? But like everything else he did, he wasn't much for convention. In the years that followed, as the warden of the Shul, he was the unimposing and welcoming face at the doors, greeting regulars and guests alike, be it at quiet services on Shabbat, midweek, high holy days, or the simchas celebrated by other members. From a young lad growing up in Stamford Hill, Hackney, Dad was a regular Shul goer. His life and his work embodied the teachings he learned from coming to Shul and the Torah. Those being tefillah, prayer, mitzvot, good deeds, and tzedakah, charity. Whilst prayer may have been a more private activity for Dad, mitzvot and tzedakah were always at the forefront of his mind and his actions. He was always looking for ways in which he could help more, be it financial support for causes he believed in, giving up his time to help out, or pro bono legal advice and assistance if he felt he could resolve a problem. Whilst we as a family were aware of these traits, The messages we have received since his passing from people who he helped, one way or another, has meant even we couldn't have imagined how wide and a deep an impact it was felt. As children, we were all shlapped to cheder. Whether we liked it or not, no excuses. From cheder and from him, he wanted us to learn the right way to do things, be guided by the strong morals he instilled in us. And over the years, we hope to grow and learn to do the things the right way and the way he would have wanted. We're proud of our dad. And the way he lived his life. And the Jewish morals he instilled in us. That is why, as a family, we hope that the commissioning of a new Sefer Torah today will make access to these ideas and principles both more physically accessible, being a smaller, lighter version of the Torahs that are in the ark behind me, but also making the teachings contained therein more immediately available to help and guide future generations to come. I'd like to thank the people who are coming to speak this morning. Barry Kapow, long-standing friend and Shul husband of Dad. Philip Lee, chairman of the Shul for many years. Rabbi Yankee Abraham, current rabbi at the Shul, full-time. And Lord Michael Levy, someone who Dad knew. Lord Levy is the president of the JLGB, where Dad was both a trustee of the Camperdown Trust and a trustee of JLGB and a patron. And I would also like to thank everyone for helping to make today possible, including the Loughton Shul events team for putting together what will be an absolutely delicious lunch afterwards. And on that note, Paul Barry Kapow.
Wow. Shirley, everyone, everybody else. Shirley, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. This is not a position I ever expected to speak from in this room. When we lost Lewis, we all lost someone different. So I'm going to try and tell you what Lewis was to me over almost 50 years. He was a quiet, humble, hard-working man who liked nothing better, and in no particular order. Spurs, Scotch, golf, for some obscure reason, The Guardian, his Masonic lodge, working almost above everything else, JLGB, and filling his home with friends and family. Oh, of course, running marathons and cycling in his latter years. Lewis was totally clueless about anything technological, absolutely and completely hopeless. I tried to teach him the basics, having spent most of my working life in tech, but to no avail. So here's a story about that. Many years ago, maybe 45 years, before the internet and mobile phones for any young ones here even existed, Lewis was sold a new IT system for his practice. I think with my help, but I can't recall that bit. I think it was called Quill or something similar if there are any lawyers here. One day at football at Spurs, he was moaning because it took ages to print out a document, a long list or something similar. I knew that they were using state-of-the-art, as it was at the time, IBM golf ball printers. So I idly said to him, "Are they printing in both directions?" And he said to me, "I've no idea." Of course, he had no clue. I knew that. But the next day, he spoke to his supplier, and guess what? They were only printing one way. So I earned my reputation from him at least as a techie for that piece of advice. Another guide to his tech skills was how thrilled he was to be able to read his beloved Guardian on his Kindle while away. Has anyone ever seen a newspaper on a Kindle? My goodness. He was a property lawyer for more than 40 years and did almost all of our moves. He even finished our last one, which was started by his daughter, Danny, and finished by Lewis because Danny was busy producing a baby, I think, at the time. Lewis and I used to enjoy political arguments as he was a very serious champagne socialist. He truly believed he was right as well. It used to give people a laugh when we started one of those discussions around the dinner table. It was really novel, however, to find we could agree about Brexit. We were both on the same side there. But in all of those years, we never had any arguments at all of any consequence that we didn't leave behind after we finished the conversation. In my younger, thinner, and more athletic days, I could never get a game of squash off of Lewis, nor a set of tennis. He always seemed effortless while doing it too. Later on in life, he took up running marathons for fun. Wow. On one occasion, while Shirley and Lewis were staying with us in Florida, Lewis got up before dawn, ran to the start of the Sarasota half marathon, which is about 3 miles away, ran back, sat down at 9 o'clock or so for his breakfast to be made by one of us who had hardly even got out of bed. That was Lewis. For very many years, we travelled to Spurs together, sat together for a lot of them, attended cup finals and even some infrequent away games. We spent a lot of time moaning about Spurs too, naturally. As a result of being friends for so long, our families have grown up together and our children and their children are friends, which is lovely. One of the highlights for us was Lewis, Shirley, Anthony and Danny coming all the way to Australia to witness their oldest, who I think he's probably watching on the phone there, being married on a boat on Sydney Harbour by a Chabad rabbi. I think it was worth the journey. As has been said before, a very active shul goer, a truly reluctant warden for 10 years. It was very sad for me that when he became a warden, I didn't have anybody to talk to most of the time when I was in shul. There you go. He was a great supporter of the shul, and to do today's event an eventual memorial to Lewis is perfect. He would be delighted. Despite being a close friend of Lewis, he was, in terms of personal issues, virtually impenetrable. The last thing he ever wanted to discuss was himself and any issues he had when going through difficult personal times, both years ago and more recently, even when he was seriously sick. Those of us who knew the depth of those situations effectively had to pretend that life was normal, which is what he wanted. On the last two occasions Lewis and I were together, it was really obvious to me that he was suffering badly, but still he would not give in and talk. So to summarise, in my case, I lost a friend with whom I could just simply carry on from where we left off, however long ago that was. Those sort of friends are rare and to be treasured. What will I miss about Lewis? Going to my lodge without the man who proposed me for membership. Discussing why it was impossible for him to get his hair cut. discussing why the jury in a well-known murder trial got it wrong. Surely we'll fill you in on that. The end of season conversations about Spurs and the political discussions that changed neither of our minds. And oh, would you have enjoyed this last week? But most of all, along with all of us here, we will miss the company of a really good man.
Can I begin saying a big thank you to Anthony and Barry for the words that they've said. It must have been extremely difficult for them. And I tell you, it's not easy to be. Rabbi Yankee, Rabbi Nim, Reverend Lorraine, Lord Michael Levy, wherever you are. I'm sure he will be here. Lady Mayor, Barbara Cohen. She's one of our own. Shirley family. My dear friends. So much has been said about dear friend Lewis. You've heard it. I can add very little to it, but perhaps in a somewhat different way. What more can be said? Question: what do we leave behind us when we depart this mortal coil? Money, assets, memories. Yes, Lewis has, through his fantastic capabilities, persona, and generosity, left all of these. But above all, Lewis has left a great name. Lewis, as you've heard, was a quietly spoken man, a passion for his family and friends, a gift for justice, and a willingness to help the needy, the less able, the oppressed. I was taught some time ago by my dear friend Cyril Dennis over Sholem that one of the greatest things that a person can achieve in their lifetime is to make a difference to the life of others. As with Cyril, Lewis did this in so many ways. Supporting the families in Sderot on the Israeli borders with Gaza, supporting the Jewish Lads and Girls Brigade, Jewish Care, CST, and as you've heard, our Shul here in Loughton, and much more, I'm sure. It's approaching 50 years since Ruth and I joined our wonderful Shul, during which time, as you've heard, Lewis was a warden under my chairmanship for a period of 10 years. But in that time, Lewis was one of the very few people that we have ever known with drive, enthusiasm, and ambition, combined with the qualities of love and respect, all without a total lack of ego, and never a call for recognition. Lewis was an example to all of us that we too can follow the footprints of a true mensch. Following footprints is something I'll refer to short. Lewis could not have done this, all of this, without the devotion and help from you, Shirley. and from his family, devoted to him, as you've heard. I never personally liked the catchphrase, "You were his rock." I'd rather say to you, Shirley, you were his inspiration and his outer strength. Rather than reprise all of the things that have already been said, I'll just pick out one that typifies Lewis and sums up his character. It was the rare talent of never putting anything or anyone down. Probably one of the few Spurs supporters that I know that even after seeing them play pathetically against teams of a lesser quality, never a bad word from Lewis. He would always seek out the glimmer of hope for the future of his beloved Spurs. I began by admiring the fact that Lewis has left a good name. I'm therefore so pleased that Shirley, you and your family have chosen a permanent way of preserving his good name by dedicating it to the greatest treasure that any Jew can have, and that is our holy Torah scroll. On behalf of all the community, we thank you for providing us with this fantastic gift. It's a wonderful treasure, which we look forward to receiving and which we will delight in treasuring. It's a fantastic tribute to a fine man, a true Gittin Neshama. Please allow me to end my tribute to Lewis and my thanks to you, Shirley, and his family, for just taking a few minutes of your time by reading a short piece written by one of my favorite poets, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This powerful poet, taught to me by my dear mother over Sholem, whose 45th yahrzeit is next week. A poem which I recited at Stepney Jewish Primary School, the forerunner to IJBS, to win the Poetry Prize. It was only a few years ago. I feel sure, Shirley, that you will not object to my coupling this rendition, which I believe to be a great message to us all, with our dear friend Millicent Newman of blessed memory, who was taken from us a short time ago. Psalm of Life, what the heart of the young man said to the psalmist. Lewis could have been that psalmist. Tell me not in mournful numbers that life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. Art is long, time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still, like muffled drums, are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle. Be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within, and God ahead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. Thank you.
Okay, just be given a 10-minute notice. So there's been a slight change in the schedule. And Shirley, Stephen, Gemma, Anthony, Lauren, Cole, Danny, Roxy, and Lane. Hello. Feeling comfortable today, that's nice. Ian, and all the family and friends who have come today to mark the Shloshim, 30 days since the burial of Lewis, our dear friend Eliezer ben Yitzchok. Obviously not to repeat many of the things, the beautiful tributes that were given until now, I was asked to focus on the portion of the week and find something which could connect to this day. And in that, I recall the portion this week begins with a king, Balak, who sees the Jewish people conquering all the neighboring countries, those that were not willing to help the Jewish people come to the land of Israel. And Balak becomes very worried for his own kingdom. And he says, how am I going to stop the Jewish threat of coming through my land? And Balak hires the renowned person who was known for cursing, had a tremendous tongue, Bilam, to come and curse the Jewish people. A long story in the portion in which describes the king trying to incentivize Bilam to come and curse the Jewish people. Bilam doesn't want to. He blames God. He says, even if you pay me all the money in the world, I will not be able to go against the word of Hashem, the word of God. And slowly, with a few enticing gifts from the king, Bilam comes on board to come and curse the Jewish people. And there's multiple stories in the portion, which I'm not going to go into now. Ultimately, he tries to curse the Jewish people, but in doing so, it ends up becoming a blessing. And Bilam says as follows, and we recite this every morning when we come into the Shul, Matovo ahalecha Yaakov, Mishkan Osecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. What was Bilam referring to? How beautiful, how goodly are your tents. And Rashi, the commentator, tells us that when Bilam was overlooking the Jewish camp, he realized, what is the Jewish secret? How are they different? And he says he saw the way that their tents, their entrances were not facing one another. There was privacy, there was modesty in the way that they lived. And they didn't, everyone knowing everyone's business. And when I was actually speaking to a member on Friday and we were talking about social media and the lack of privacy, I said, I was actually about to talk about this. On Sunday, we're talking about Lewis. Lewis was an extremely private and modest individual, right? Never make a fanfare, never to make a pomp and ceremony, no ties, just very literal in the way that he did things. He went about purely to the goal to help the other person, not about his own self-interest. How are people going to look at me? Are they going to look at me in the right way? If that person needs help, I will help him, even if it doesn't mean I'm going to get thank you. I'm not going to get anything for it. He was completely modest in his approach. And then yesterday afternoon, upon learning, as the custom is, Shabbat afternoon, to learn Pirkei Avot, ethics of our fathers, you know, Lewis was really strong and very, very careful when it came to ethics. The Mishnah in chapter 5, which was yesterday's chapter, Mishnah 19. And as we know, the word Mishnah also comes from the same word neshama, as soul. And when we read a Mishnah, we bring merit to the soul. And I'm going to read the Mishnah in chapter 5. In this book, it's Mishnah 23. Kol mi sheyesh bo shloisha dvarim halalu. Whoever possesses these three traits are Hu mitamido shel Avraham Avinu. These are from the disciples of Abraham, our forefather. The Shlosha Dvarim Acherim, and these three opposite traits. Hu mitamidav shel Bilam Harasha. He is from the disciple of the wicked Bilam. Now, why does the Mishnah compare Abraham and Bilam? What's the comparison? So the commentators explain that what is the similarity between Abraham, our forefather, and Bilam, the one who sought to curse the Jewish people. Why does the Mishnah compare these two? Because the Mishnah tells us as follows, that we know when Abraham, when he had to do a mitzvah, it says, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. Avraham got up first thing in the morning. He was an early morning person. He got up right away to go and do the will, to bring up his son on the altar on Mount Moriah as an offering. And that's what Avraham Avinu did. He was willing, first and foremost, to wake up inconveniently to go and do the will of God. On the other hand, we have Bilam in this week's portion, who wakes up the first thing in the morning, what to do? Not to do a favor, but rather to go and curse the Jewish people. The first thing he does in the morning with alacrity, goes and he wants to go and curse. So that's why the Mishnah brings these two. Now, what is the three character traits that the Mishnah wants to tell us? What is the Talmidei of what are the disciples of Avraham Avinu? Ayin tova, ruach nimocha, benefesh shvela. Mitalmido shel Avraham Avinu. And someone that has a generous eye, a modest demeanor, and a humble soul. These are the traits of a disciple of Avraham Avinu. Now we go to Bilam. Bilam, what is Bilam's? An evil eye, an arrogant demeanor, an insatiable soul of the attributes of the disciple of Bilam, wicked Bilam. So over here we see three character traits, which I think really symbolize Lewis Lane. A generous eye, seeing, number one, everyone in a good light. An eye which sees the good, the benefit, the beauty in other people, even when they themselves may have not seen it. Obviously, we're talking about his generosity and charity was what follows into the next part. A modest demeanor was never about fanfare. It was always about doing what was right and modest. And thirdly, a humble soul. Every person that came into Lewis's met him, realized what a humble person he was, who cared deeply for all those around him. And he, honestly, we can say he was, when we look at this week's parasha, the story of Bilam, and we compare it to Avraham Avinu, and together with Shirley, was like Abraham and Sarah. If you've been to their house, it's pretty much open from all four sides. You can come in anytime and just go in for l'chaim or whatever, for food. Their home was a home which was open for all, with a big heart and a big warmth. We certainly can say Lewis was a person who was mitamidei shel Avraham Avinu, was a disciple of Avraham Avinu. And we should take from Lewis these traits in our lives to make the world the way Abraham set out at the beginning. He was Echad Hoya Avraham. Avraham was the only one who set out against the whole world, right? To bring a world of harmony, of unity. And may Lewis's memory be for all of us to remember these three traits: a good eye, a generous eye, a modest spirit, a modest demeanor, and a humble soul. He will be sorely missed. And I hope that through writing the Sefer Torah, as Anthony mentioned earlier, that these values that he lived should be a constant reminder for us all how we're meant to live the most ultimate and most fulfilling life. Amen. Now I'd like to call Rabbi Portnoy to say the Askara. Please rise.
Yeah.
Ano Adonai melech morei rachamim, Elohei aruchos techavasa, Asher b'yadcha nafsho yisachayim v'meisim, Ano kabel b'chesdecha hagadol, Es nishmas Rabbi Yitzchok ben Rabbi Eliezer, Asher nesach el hamoy, Chus v'chamoy lalav slachum v'chel l'chol peshav, Ki Adam ein tzadik baretz asher yatzetoy v'lo yacheta, Zachai loisit kosay asher asa, V'hisachar ita yuful asay lefonav, Ana hastaras nishmotzai b'tzel kanofecha, Hoidi ayoracha insoi v'simach v'isas konacha, Nimois b'min chonetach, V'sashpi aloi merav tuv, Atzofun l'tzadikim k'moy shekasuv, Marav tuv koshet zofan t'lerecha, Pa'al tolacha isimbach, Neged b'nei Adam, Ana Adonai aroi feilish v'reilei, V'mechavesh yatzvoisam, Shalem nichim ravelim, Chaz kem yam sem v'yoy mevlom v'gonam, V'zachrem v'nei beisam, L'chayim toivim v'yarukim, Teim v'libam v'rascha v'bosachol avdecha v'leivav, Shalem, V'siach harizam, Shalom, Amen. Kish asher imoyten achamanu, Kein anoichem achemchem v'shalam tenuchamu, Lo yavayoychim sheikh v'reichek v'yosef, Ki Adonai yelach v'ayrolam v'shalmu yimeyavech, Bila mavech sanetzach u'moch v'adnoi t'imo me'al kopanim v'cherpas amo yosir me'al kolaretz, Ki Adonai diber. Lord and King, full of compassion, God of the spirits of all flesh, in whose hands are the souls of the living and the dead, receive, we pray you, in your great love and kindness, the soul of Rabbi Yitzchok ben Rabbi Eliezer, who has been gathered to his people. Shelter his soul in the shadow of your wings, make known to him the path of life. For in your presence is the fullness of joy, at your right hand bliss forevermore. May the Lord who heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds grant consolation to the mourners, strengthen and support them in their day of sadness and grief, and remember them and their families for a long and good life. Put into their hearts the love and reverence for you, so that they may serve you with a perfect heart, and let their end be peace. Amen.
Yeah, it's coming. Lord Levy will be here in a moment. He's just arriving. What? Yeah, if you want. Yeah, if you want. Do you want to? You sure?
Seeing as we have 5 minutes, and seeing as I can always talk, listening to everybody, Anthony, Barry, and Philip talking about Lewis just brings memories and memories back on things that he did that I was never aware of, or perhaps I was aware of. As a wife, you have a completely different perspective. You see the flaws along with the good. He never listened very well. I had to repeat myself a lot. I used to tell him I wasn't nagging. If he did it the first time, I wouldn't have to say it a second time. He telephoned me when I was in America at midnight, gave me the fright of my life. One of the children were pregnant at the time. And he said, turn it off. I said, turn what off? He's screaming down the phone at me. The Alexa had turned on, and it was 5 in the morning in England. He didn't know how to turn it off. I was trying to tell him, and eventually I said, just unplug it. So this was my life. And I see Lord Levy has arrived. So I'm going to stop my fill-in and let Lord Levy take the floor.
Shirley, thank you very much. Sorry to be a little late, but the traffic was very heavy actually coming. Kavod Rabbanim and the family of the late Lewis Lane, Shirley, your wonderful children and family. You are doing something very unique and special today in dedicating the new Sefer Torah in memory of Lewis. I have met the Lane family in my capacity as president of JLGB. And when I went to Lavoya just a few weeks ago, I was quite stunned. It was probably, if not the biggest Lavoya I've been to, but certainly one of the biggest that I've ever been to. The outpouring of love for Lewis, for Shirley, for her children, for the family, was quite stunning. I truly had no idea of what Lewis had achieved in his life and what he had done. And what was remarkable was a number of people came up to me, either Michael or Lord Levy, whatever, and said, do you know how much Lewis helped me? No one knew. Someone else, do you know what Lewis did for somebody? I won't mention the name, but no one knew. And I just had this repetition during the course of that funeral. And I came away thinking, that is truly a unique and special quality. Most people who give tzedakah, who help others, they don't necessarily seek kavod or yichus, credit, but they like to get it no matter what. This was obviously a very, very different human being in Lewis. No problem, they're much more important than I am. He was obviously a highly successful man. Let them have fun, I'll go out, I don't mind. He was obviously a highly successful man in his legal career and commercial career. But he shared that success with others, those who were less fortunate. And I know whenever I approached him, which was only for JLGB, I didn't need to ask, what do you need, Michael? And he would deliver. And he and Shirley dedicated their lives to JLGB. I so remember going down to the camps, seeing them in uniform. I've never worn uniform, but it was fun to see the rest of them in uniform, I have to say. And I see Philip, who is a prominent member, president of this community here in Loughton, and also very active in charity work, particularly in Jewish care. And for me to come here, I've never been here before. Terrible confession, I didn't know where Loughton was. But my sat nav did, and I found it. And that's just not being a snob. I'm a good Hackney boy. I'm a Stanford Hill boy. I just never been to Loughton. But there you go. But for me to come today is special because Lewis was truly special. And surely you will carry on that wonderful memory with your children, your grandchildren, your many friends in this area and in wider society. And giving this Sefer Torah means that every Shabbat and Chag, Lewis's memory, not me, mine's in the car. If you sit on the platform, never have your phone on. You know. Lewis's memory will be with this community forever, because there's no greater mitzvah than to give a Sefer Torah, our holiest book. And we've just had Chukat, and next Shabbat will be Balak. And I know that this community will cherish the memory of Lewis and this Sefer Torah. So really, for all of you in this community, for you, Shirley, for your family, for me, it wasn't an effort, but a privilege to be here this morning, because there are certain people in life that one wants to pay respect to and give tribute to. And the number of times I met Lewis, he came over very much to me as one of those people. And he was taken very suddenly and very quickly. But his memory will be a blessing for us all for many years to come. And this Sefer Torah will manifest that blessing. So I wish this community continued success. I hope you enjoy the use of this Sefer Torah. To you, the rub of this Kehillah, and to the blessed memory of Lewis. Lewis, thank you for everything you did for Anglo Jewry, for all those people you helped that no one knew about, but they knew. That is the soul put on this earth for a very special purpose. May your memory truly be a blessing for us all. Lewis, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Levy. I would now like to ask Rabbi Singer, who's the Rabbi in the Federation Synagogue in Ilford, who himself is a scribe, and not just a scribe himself, a teacher of many scribes, and oversees the Safrut in London. He just come back from Israel and has kindly offered to come this morning to give us a glimpse into how Sefer Torah is prepared, written. So this will give us the launch of our new Sefer Torah. Shirley and the family have kindly dedicated Sefer Torah, but I've asked if everyone would like to partake in the Sefer Torah, whether it will be writing a letter, a portion. There will be a website set up for everyone to partake. Whether it will be a dedication for the letters or for the scroll or for even the crown of the Sefer Torah, everyone will be able to participate in Lewis's Sefer Torah. So now hand over to Rabbi Singer, who will explain about the Sefer Torah. Sorry. Family, good morning to this wonderful congregation
Abrams. A Sefer Torah. You know, there are basically two items on this table. And how fitting that a Sefer Torah should be dedicated to the memory of somebody. We all know that this is an 8th time. It's a tree of life. From what's going to be written, please God, in the Torah. Whenever we buy, whenever we purchase something new, it comes with an instruction manual. Now, admittedly, the gentleman I'll refer to here will include myself. We don't usually read the instruction manual. We know it. But our instruction manual for our Jewish life is held up by 8 time, by the tree of life. So whatever that represents for each and every single one of us. It is really, truly remarkable. How many of us get to see a Sefer Torah? It's not written with lemon juice, but it will be written, please God, with letters of black fire, symbolically. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai, the letters were supposedly of fire, black fire. I have no idea what black fire is. I mean, normally we see different colors of that same heat. But that, please God, is what was going to be written on this. Starting, of course, at the beginning. Who doesn't know that the Aleph base begins? Well, there you go. I've given it away, haven't I? But it doesn't begin with Aleph. We have to wait till the 3rd letter of the Torah before we get to Aleph. The first letter of the Sefer Torah is the letter Bet. Bereshis. And please don't translate Bereshis in the beginning. In my opinion, that is incorrect. That implies that there was a beginning. But we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is from eternity to eternity. The circle. It has no starting points and no finishing points. It is a continuum. The center of that continuum is going to be our Torah. Baruch Hu used the letters of Aleph base as tools to create the world. Bereshis, therefore, in the beginning of God's creating the world. Bereshis bara Elokim, the beginning of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creating the world. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was there before the world was created. The last letter of the Sefer Torah. The last letter of the word Yisrael, a Lamed. And if we invert on Simchas Torah, apart from finishing all of the parshas of the Torah, we also begin again Bereshis. We have a cycle. So let's look at what this Eitz Chaim will support. We begin, as it were, at the end with the Lamed and come to the beginning with the base, Lev. The Torah is the heart of our very being. There are approximately, no, that's not true. There are exactly
245 columns in the Sefer Torah. This is one of the pieces, one of 60 pieces, which will eventually be sewn together to make the Sefer Torah. An enormous undertaking. We say that a sofa's work is to write a column a day, and he has 245 days' work. It's very difficult actually to maintain that. At the end of however many hours it takes to write that one column, which might be one day's work, there are interruptions. That's life. Things crop up. So the Torah is going to take at least a year. At least a year. Some Sofrim actually say, I'll build into my contract a little bit of spare time, maybe 18 months. The very first Sefer Torah that I wrote, after nearly 6 years, when it wasn't finished yet, my wife said to me, "What's taking you so long? Moshe Rabbeinu wrote 12 Sefer Torah in one day." I said, "Actually, you're wrong. It was 13. It was half a day, and afterwards he died." But it is a labor of love. I don't know of a sofer, those that I've taught and those that I have met. I started doing this a short while ago, around about 1975. I don't know anybody who has not enjoyed writing the Sefer Torah. One of the reasons it took me so long to write. That's an interesting sentence. I wonder what that means. So I put down my pen and I open my books and I get carried away. But it is a labor of love. We actually have very modern equipment. I don't keep it in my top pocket. It should be written with something that is emanating from a kosher species of animal. Should be. It can be written with a regular metal nib, but it's much better to cut your own quill, otherwise known as a quillness. My bottle of black ink. Where would I be without it? And you know the recipe for this? Wow. We just read in the Torah about Moshe Rabbeinu getting water from a stone. That's almost like what it is to get the recipe for making ink. But I do know it. Anybody that wants it, I'm quite prepared to share it. Probably the most important piece of equipment that we've got. It's technically known as schmatter. It's used for keeping the quill clean. Can you picture in your mind the letter Bet? A few months ago, on a previous trip to Israel, I was asked by the headmaster of one of my grandsons, where he goes to school, I was asked if I would come in and speak to the class about tefillin. Fine. At the end of the talk, one of the boys had a question. And he said, "I've noticed that on some of the letters, It's like little crowns. What are they? Now, as a teacher, I was in my element. I don't always use sarcasm, but any teacher will tell you that sometimes it's like a little bit of something that we enjoy. This little boy wanted to know, what are the crowns on the letters? The Gemara tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu went up Mount Sinai and he saw God writing these extra crowns on the letters, and he asked God, what is this? That's the question. And that's all that's important, is that Moshe Rabbeinu sees letters, but there's something else being added. Truth is, we've no idea what it is. And I asked the little boy and the whole class. I mean, told them, actually, these little crowns are a secret. Can you keep a secret? I asked them. I asked the class, can you keep a secret? There wasn't one child who could not keep a secret. At which point I informed them, good, so can I. Important, essential is this. This is known as a tikkun sufri. The Sefer Torah that we have had throughout the generations should have had the exact same words, letters. Throughout the generations, nothing can be changed in order for the Sefer Torah to be kosher. That means that we need to be able to copy from a reliable text. That's why we have this. And the little instructions for the Sefer. At the beginning of each line, there is a number. Line 1, line 2, line 3. Not every single line has the same number of letters, and not all the letters are exactly the same width. So there is a key at the end, a little bit technical, so we won't go into it, but it tells the Sefer where to make the letter slightly narrower, where to make the letter slightly wider. Oops. Because as we look at our piece of parchment, not only are there lines ruled from which letters are suspended, not written on the line, but the letters are suspended from the lines. One letter is an exception to that. The only letter which is not suspended from the line, but half above and half below, is the lamed. More or less, the lamed is the middle of the alphabet. It sort of looks forwards and backwards at the letters from Aleph and the letters towards Taf. But there are columns. There are no pages. Columns, as I mentioned, 245 columns. Some people write 248 columns. But that's, again, technical. But what we don't want, and we can see that the columns are ruled, there are vertical lines as well. We want all the words to be within those parameters. The most important part of the Sefer Torah is that it should be legible. Words shouldn't be too close together. Letters within one word shouldn't be too spread, so that we don't confuse one word into two or two words into one. To learn to be a sofer, to be good at your job, you can't write an aleph or a base or a gimel. Lots of people can, but to be able to do those and to be proficient at it in less than 2 years, again, impossible. Anybody that tries it in less than that amount of time, it really won't come out nice. So the choice of sofa needs to be also very careful. we're building up ingredients. It'll be on the Eitz Chaim. It'll be on parchment. It'll be written with black ink. And this is our pen. Don't forget the shema. It'll be copied from a text. Let me give you an idea of some of the letters. Because within the letters, now to that class of my grandson, there are secrets. But I'm going to divulge some of the secrets to you because I like sharing. Think of an aleph. An aleph has got 3 parts to it. A sort of yud on the top right-hand side. A sort of yud at the bottom. Any accountants here? Dear. The letter yud in Gematria, its numerical value is 10. So 10 plus 10 is 20. But the middle part is similar to a letter Vav, which is 6. 26. 26 is the same as Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name. So even in the Aleph, which is 1 letter, and God is only 1, we have a hint already of God himself. We learned that Moshe Rabbeinu with God spoke face to face. Right? It was a personal meeting. And what happened there, the word for mouth, God spoke to Moshe. The letter K. My favorite letter. It's like a letter Kof, which has a numerical value of 20. And the bit that goes inside is like a letter Vav. 6. Yet again, 26. But the white bit in the middle becomes like a letter Bet. So there are 2 people involved in the pet, in the conversation. The conversation to do with God. That's what he's given us. These are some of the things involved in the Sefer Torah. I think what I'd like to do now, I had a great story, very short. Reb Shalom Shvedron, known as the Maggid of Yerushalayim, he told a story. 2 people talking about the taste of wine. One said, I've never tasted wine, I don't know what it tastes like. Person listening says, you don't know the taste of wine? I'll tell you the taste of wine. He told him how many grapes, and he told him how much sugar, and how much time to spend in the various processes. So now have you understood? No. Overhearing that conversation was another person who says, of course he doesn't understand. You've got the ingredients all wrong. And he gave different ingredients. Now do you understand? No. Along comes a third person, takes a bottle of wine and a glass, pours it in, there. Now do you understand the taste of wine? So I'd like to show you how we write some of the letters. It's not something, unfortunately, that a lot of ladies get to see. However good the Samson is that comes up to do Hagla. And for however long it takes him to spin around, by the time you focus that there's letters there, it's gone. So anybody and everybody, you're welcome to come and see as we begin to write the Sefer Torah with the letter base. The letter base is a letter larger than other letters. You know, for instance, in the Shema, the Shin and the Ayin are larger than the rest. There's a reason for that, another time. So it is with the letter base, the very first letter of the Sefer Torah. It is larger than the others. It's also decorated with some of these crowns. And again, if you keep a secret, so can I. There you are. How would you like to do it? Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I'll sit here and...
Stephen. Yeah, stand the right way, yeah. It's fine. It takes. That's right. I'm gonna squeeze.
Yeah, I take the kids that can go on the grass round through there behind. I think, yeah, go up and make them look.
Sam
great.
Abrams,
Yes.
it's precioso.
Yeah. Bezirks van Eliezer ben Yitzchok.
Okay, before the commencement of writing, it could well be that we've started with the base of Bereshis, gone through to the very last letter of the Sefer Torah, and yet it might not be kosher. All the letters that need to be there are there. Why wouldn't it be kosher? Because if the Sefer at the beginning doesn't say the following, that he's writing it l'shem kedushas Sefer Torah is not valid. So please listen, all of you, when I say, Hareini koisev Sefer Torah zeh l'shem kedushas Sefer Torah v'chol ha'izkoros shabo yehi l'shem kedushas Hashem. What we said was that we're writing the Sefer Torah for the sake of the Holy Sefer Torah, and even the times that we write God's name in it, that God's name will also be written for the sake of his holy name. The Shem Kedushas Sefer Torah. So there we have it. First one, Sefer.
Well,
Yes. Yes.
And each time we do, there's like a time.
we get a family vote, and then everyone can come and see how it's being
Barry,
done.
would you take a photo?
9 hours straight. Without getting that all.
Yeah.
Come stand with Daddy.
Yeah.
Harry, come stand with Daddy. There's a family photo. Come on. Stand between you and Anna. Here's my mate. Stand right there.
So who wants to write? Okay, fine, very good. The table forward.
Thanks. Everyone look at the camera. Adam, oh look at Barry. Barry's here. He's here.
He's got like 5 seconds.
Oh look at Barry. Say cheese. Or say Spurs. Spurs.
Chandler Bing.
Nice.
Stephen, I guess so, right?
So what we do is you rest your hand on my hand.
Yep.
And say also the shame to do just Sefer.
Shame to do so.
And we're going to be writing the next word, which is from the word borrow. So rest your hand on mine.
Shame to do so. Sefer Torah.
All right. Get Stephen in.
Brilliant.
You missed it.
Anthony.
Anthony.
Anthony's the other.
Okay,
So everyone's invited now for a kiddush or a brunch in the kiddush room and outside in the terrace.
Rest
There'll
your
be
hand on my
drinks.
hand. Say the word shame.
Right?
Each of this table.
Anybody else write?
I could Anthony do another one with your sister. Hold it.
It's level.
Let's see if Anthony's to have his hand up. Just do another one.
Anthony,
Yeah. Right, go.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, go. Right, you can do it with his sister. Shame. Morris. Morris.
Doesn't need a ring. Don't need a ring.
I think.
No, it isn't. But he's writing.
You make a mistake. There's a way of.
Okay.